The physical universe operates on an absolute, inertial timeline. A second is a second. Yet the human brain has no dedicated sensory organ. We lack a specific receptor for time, the way we have for light or sound. Mind time is an actively constructed cognitive phenomenon. Because the brain builds it from scratch, it is highly susceptible to distortion. The most common manifestation is the feeling that time flies when you are having fun. In neurobiology, having fun is defined specifically as an approach-motivated, high-reward, and cognitively absorbing state. Subjective time elasticity is a dynamic biological interpretation of reality, dictated by shifting neurochemistry. This equation maps the cognitive model of perceived duration. To gauge how much time has passed, the brain essentially accumulates temporal pulses over a set interval. Inside the integral, P of t represents the rate of an internal pacemaker firing off pulses. A of t represents the allocation of your attention to the task of timing. When you engage in an intensely rewarding activity, the brain prioritizes immediate processing over temporal tracking. That high engagement state actively hijacks your attentional resources. By diverting attention away from the clock, the internal gate that collects these pulses begins to close or flicker. Incoming pulses are blocked and simply go uncounted. This formula is a mathematical abstraction. To see where these pulses are generated, we must look at the physical neuroanatomy. Understanding the math of attentional gating shows that intense engagement deletes biological seconds from our conscious ledger. This map illustrates the striatal beat frequency model. The prefrontal cortex houses neural networks oscillating at varying frequencies. These waves travel to the dorsal striatal. Here, medium spiny neurons act as coincidence detectors, logging specific moments only when these varying cortical waves align. Time in the human brain is a synchronized, rhythmic alignment of chemical waves hitting a target simultaneously. Dopamine is the primary neurochemical regulator of this cortical clock speed. Highly engaging activities trigger phasic bursts of dopamine released from the ventral tegmental area. This graph models dopamine accumulation dynamics. As dopamine floods the system, it forces cortical oscillators to speed up their firing frequency. But this creates a paradox. If these waves hit the target beat faster, why doesn't time feel agonizingly long? The brain compares current inputs to stored reference memories. Because the oscillators are accelerated, it reaches its memorized target beat much faster in subjective space. Dopamine increases the frame rate of your consciousness. By parsing more information per absolute second, the external world seems to move faster by comparison. Dopamine actively accelerates the frame rate of our cognitive processing, effectively shrinking our perception of elapsed time. Researchers can prove this duality of the internal timing system by pharmacologically decoupling the brain's hardware. They chemically isolate the clock from the memory ledger. This isolation is tested using the peak interval procedure, a behavioral assay where animal subjects are trained to time specific durations in exchange for a reward. The first manipulation targets to live clock speed using dopamine agonists, such as cocaine. This distribution curve represents standard peak interval response times, mapping baseline performance. When dopamine agonists are introduced, the entire curve shifts abruptly to the left. This immediate scalar shift indicates the clock speed was instantly altered. That immediate shift contrasts heavily with the acetylcholine system, which governs the brain's historical memory ledger for time intervals. Using cholinergic drugs targets memory encoding, leaving the live clock unchanged. Returning to the baseline distribution, the memory pattern data behaves differently. Manipulating acetylcholine causes the curve to gradually step to the right over multiple trials, proving the drug slowly rewrites stored reference durations. Researchers can pinpoint where time is perceived versus remembered because they can chemically isolate the two systems and watch the behavioral data diverge. There is a theoretical hurdle. Perfect mathematical oscillators fail to replicate the reality of how humans and animals time events. Biological timing exhibits scalar timing, a universal property where timing errors increase proportionally with the length of the interval being timed. The Morris-Lacar model shows the circuit requires biological noise to achieve scale invariance. This means firing frequency fluctuations and memory retrieval errors. It's a strict neurocomputational requirement, allowing accurate perception of time. This flowchart synthesizes the neurocomputational architecture into a single unified circuit. On the input side, dopamine dictates the real-time speed of the biological clock's cortical oscillators. On the storage side, Acetylcholine encodes the historical memory of those exact intervals within the striatal detectors. When you engage in highly rewarding, fun tasks, you flood this system with a massive surge of dopamine. This dopamine surge accelerates the oscillators while siphoning attentional gates away from the temporal tracking loop. It is an elegant mathematical system that relies on messy biological realities to operate. The feeling of time flying occurs when this dual system deprioritizes chronometry in favor of immediate engagement. Why did evolution select for a highly elastic, chemically dependent timing system instead of a rigidly accurate clock? Approach-motivated states narrow your focus. By shutting out the internal clock, the brain facilitates the pursuit of a critical, high-value goal. Losing track of time while pursuing a reward ensures absolute persistence, a survival mechanism built into our cognitive hardware. Multiple subjective times coexist in the brain, continuously adapting to our physiological and emotional states. Subjective duration is a noisy, elegant adaptation that ensures human consciousness stays locked onto whatever matters most to our survival.